Hey everyone, welcome to Real Leadership's discussion of John Maxwell's book, Put Your Dream to the Test. This is session number 8, and we're looking today at chapter number 7, which really deals with the costs that we're going to be putting into our dreams. So we're going to be discussing that today. Also, don't forget to check us out on realleadershipcompany.com. That's the website where you can get all the information about our company, as well as find great resources at Unstuck University, which is right there. And this is where we keep a listing of all of our content, all of the classes that we've done, other resources that you may want to find. You want to check that out at UnstuckU on the realleadershipcompany.com website. But having said that, why don't we get started? I know everyone has their guides available to them. We're going to be starting today. Let's see here. We're starting on chapter number 7, and that is on page 40. So Tom, why don't we dive in?
Sure thing. So the question today is talking about cost. So am I willing to pay the price for my dream? So let's dive into our first question today. What struggles do you see happening before you succeed? That's a good one today to kick this thing off. What struggles do you see happening before you succeed?
Well, one that I have is that because of the Corona idea things, my company has cut out all tuition assistance. So until we get back to work and things like it'd be a perfect time for people to be taking classes and stuff, but that is one hurdle that I have right now.
That's good. Thank you for sharing. By the way, Bert, we needed to start off with an attitude of gratitude, so I think we should do that really quick before we continue on. So let's do that real quick. Who would like to start us out with an attitude of gratitude today?
I'll go. I'm thankful for all my Facebook friends during the stuff that went down last week. They've all been very supportive and gave me just a lot of more encouragement. And for God, it's been constant prayer. God, get me through this, get me through this. And I know you have to go through things, but so I'm very thankful for my Facebook buddies and for God for just keeping me going.
Good. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Who's next?
I'll go next. I'm thankful for some opportunities that have arisen for me to kind of jump headfirst into reacclimating myself toward pursuing my dream. I know that sounds all vague and everything, but it's funny. You start going after something, and God will kind of lay things at your feet and say, "Here you go." And that's kind of what's happened this week, and it's been kind of exciting.
Good. Thank you.
I just want to throw out my mom. I don't know if I mentioned it before, but she went through her second round with lymphoma, and she's just turned 86. And the doctor said that she is, again, cancer-free, and she doesn't have to take any more chemo. So
Cool.
that's great news.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Awesome. I'm thankful because we told all of our employees on May 1st that it was time to go back to work. We had a lot of people who were taking time off because of uncertainty, and obviously being in home care, we're essential employees, we have to work. And kind of did a rallying cry for them, and happy to say that of the 42 people who were taking off the month of April, which was incredibly detrimental to our business, almost all but 5 are back to work now, which is fantastic. So I'm just thankful for them, and that we're able to continue to provide care to the community.
Awesome. Thanks, Bert. For me, I'm thankful for all of you for making this possible. I mean, without you, it'd just be Bert and I talking together. So we thank you for being a part of this and for sacrificing your Saturday morning to be a part. Obviously, it's for you and to help you in your dream, but we're so thankful that we could all be together. I'm thankful for that. So again, what struggles do you see happening before you succeed? Anybody else want to take a stab at that?
Failure to focus, squirrel, get sidetracked.
Big time.
It's a good one. Anybody else? Okay, so we'll shift gears. The price of a dream. So what price are you willing to pay? And I want to kind of set this up before we get started in that. So we'll go to the local Coney Island and buy a hot dog or coney for 99 cents. But we'll go to an amusement park and pay $5 or $6 for the same dog, right? So sometimes we place different values on things. So if the local Coney Island said they were going to charge $6 for a coney, you'd say, no way, I'm not going to buy it. But if you go to amusement park, you will be willing to pay that price. So in thinking of this in terms of our dream, right, we may put a value on the dream, like I'm only willing to spend this much, or I'm only willing to give this much, but put in a situation, right, where let's say we needed a water heater, right? And so if you went out and shop for a water heater any day of the week, you could probably find a good deal. But when you need a water heater,
Right.
then you got to take whatever you can get pretty much to keep your house running. So let's keep that in mind as we ask this question: what price are you willing to pay?
I guess I don't know how to answer that.
Sometimes it's hard to know until you're faced with the price. Like, what is it that you're being asked to pay, and is that more important to you than your dream? You know, the easy answer is, oh, I'll do whatever it takes, but you don't know that you will until you're actually asked to do that.
That's good, David. Yeah. Any other thoughts on that? Okay, so let's look at what will you pay. So number one, the dream is free, right? We have always been talking about that. It doesn't cost a thing to dream, but the journey isn't. The dream is free, but the journey isn't. Okay, so we're talking about the cost questions, right? Knowing what price we're willing to pay, and David, you hit the nail on the head that we say we do whatever it takes, but when we're put to that task, will we actually follow through with that? So thus far, according to the first question here, what have you learned about sacrifice? What have you learned about sacrifice thus far?
It's not easy. I don't know about painful. It's maybe down the road sacrifices will be painful, but right now it's just like, I don't feel like doing that.
Real quick, Keith, have you found that this group here in coming to this mastermind has helped hold you accountable to doing it?
Yes, yes. Like I said in the beginning, this group I've been in a lot of coaching groups over my life. I love this thing. You guys keep going. I'll pay for it. So will Dave and Dave, I'm sure. But this is really helpful to me. Keep me going, accountability, and just the motivation of talking to other people, like-minded people. I don't have that. I'm usually on my own doing everything.
That's good. Thank you.
Sacrifice is, we fill our lives with something. There is no part of our life that doesn't have something in it. So if you have to make room for your dream, which we all do, then you have to sacrifice something. It ties very much into what are you willing to pay. You have to figure out what you're willing to sacrifice to make room for your dream. Right now, right this minute, we're sacrificing some time. So it's my thought.
And, you know, there are definitely things that I'm not willing to sacrifice. I heard I'll never forget, I heard an executive give a speech once on the success. His quote was, "Success requires sacrifice." And this guy was he was fairly young, and he was already on his third marriage. And so, you know, I think that's, you know, as we're progressing, we have to decide, you know, how much, not just financially, time, whatever, but even our other things in our lives, because whatever we're doing is, like David said, is going to take away resources and time from other things, and we have to determine how much we're willing to sacrifice.
So I think that's an important question for us to ask ourselves. You know, what am I willing to pay? And then thinking about the sacrifice. Some things only come about by sacrifice, right? In order to get the things that we want. So let's jump on the number 2. The price must be paid sooner than you think. The price must be paid sooner than you think. I know that John Maxwell has said, you either pay now or pay later, but either way you're going to pay, right? And so he talks about paying, probably paying sooner. So what would the return be if you never invest?
There wouldn't be. You will get what life hands you, and then moan about it.
Right.
Well, you get your investment back. If you invest nothing,
Right.
you get nothing.
That's good, David. Exactly that. But, you know, and we think about how insane that is, but we do that, don't we? We don't tend to invest, and then we don't get, or we just get whatever we get. And we do that throughout our whole life. And we get ahead here and fall back there, and get ahead here and fall back here. Whereas if we took the time to really invest, you know, on a consistent basis, even if it's just a little bit, guys,
Mm-hmm.
you know, if we invested just a little bit, but we're consistent in that. Again, the James Clear book, Atomic Habits, he talks about changing your life, changing your habits by 1%, but being consistent at that every day of the year, and you're going to see it compound at the end of the year. So it makes a big difference. Any other comments on that?
No,
What's his last name again, Tom? I know you've mentioned it multiple times. What is the guy who wrote Atomic Habits?
James Clear.
Clear?
Yep. And he sends out an email every Thursday, you know, to continue to motivate. Yeah, but it's a fantastic book. I encourage everyone to get this. I think this book will really help you, you know, fulfill your dreams, because it's just so thought out, and it's a great book, and it's practical too when it comes to finding out how to create your habits and in positive habits. So it's good stuff.
Dave, Travis, there's a couple more. The Slight Edge, Jeff Olson, that's a really good one. And then Darren Hardy's got The Compound Effect. They're both really good books too.
Okay, hold on. I'm writing this down. Slight Edge by who?
Jeff Olson,
Okay, and what was the third one?
The Compound Effect. And that's Darren Hardy.
Thank you, Keith.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Okay, so number 3, the price will be higher than you expect. The price will be higher than you expect. So why is the price always higher than you expect?
Because there's going to be stuff come up that you didn't realize until you get there. And it's like, oh, it's like David said before, you don't know what you're into until you hit that point. And then are you going to make a sacrifice to finish it up?
That's good. So if anybody has read the chapter 7 there, It talks about the pastor who really loved his motorcycle.
Mhm.
Bert?
And yeah, Bert. And so he had to be willing to give up his motorcycle at one point for the sake of his dream. And so, that was his pride and joy. And think about it, if you want to think about it from a biblical standpoint of Abraham and sacrificing his son Isaac, right? I mean, that was his pride and joy right there, obviously. And of course, it was a human being. And, obviously he didn't want to sacrifice. But he was willing to do so to fulfill what was the calling upon his life. And thank God he didn't have to do that. But that's the key. Why is the price always higher than we expect? So number 4, the price must be paid more than once. The price must be paid more than once. It would be nice if we could invest and just sit back and collect the residuals on a regular basis, but it's probably not going to work out that way, right? So there are no toll-free roads, it says. The further you go and develop your dream, the costlier it becomes. So why does the price have to be paid more than once for your dream?
I think that the previous answer is going to cover that too, because you get step 14 done and pay the price. You go to step 15, it might be a higher price that you got to pay. As how you go higher and higher, the sacrifice could get bigger and bigger.
Thank you, Keith.
Well, Travis ain't saying nothing.
So the axiom here is the higher you want to go, the more you must give up. Now, I think that John Maxwell talked about a mountain climber who had all this gear, right? And he was told by the professional mountain climbing instructor that you need to take only the essentials. But he thought, I'm going to be prepared. I'm going to take all this stuff with me. And the further up he went, the more he started leaving things behind. Right? Now, he could have at any point stopped and gave up. But in order to continue, there's some things you need to leave behind to fulfill your dream. Right? So number 5, is it possible to pay too much for our dream?
Absolutely. And I think that's the point that I was making earlier. When you give up things that are more essential and more important to you than your dream, then you've paid too much.
That's good, Dave. All right, but we've asked the question, how much are you willing to pay, right? So when have we taken the time to evaluate what's important to us, right? What's most important to us? When have we taken the time to figure out how much we're willing to give, how much we're willing to pay for the sake of our dream? So what price is too high to pay for your dream? Dave, you kind of alluded to that, but let's develop this just a little more. What price is too high to pay for your dream?
My family. I was talking to my uncle who was quite successful in his business, and he regrets now, he said his kids grew up without him knowing them, and without him, having an impact on their lives when they were in high school. So I think that's just another example of when, working on our dreams, working on our goals, that we have to be careful.
Yeah.
Well, I think one of the things that we should be thinking about is, the things that we're unwilling to sacrifice, like family. I think part of the way to insulate or insure against that is to make those a part of your dream. Attach them to your dream. So it's not it's not something you give up. It's something you take with
Mm, that's good. That's really good. So, yeah, it's a really good thought there, David. Thank you. Um, so, so he says, explain why it might be possible to pay too much for your dream.
Well, it could be the family thing. I mean, when I was a kid and I had dreams of everything, man, I worked my butt off and ended up, years down the road losing the family. Um, that was way too much. Way too much.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I think if we don't count the cost ahead of time, we can put ourselves in a position where, we're at a crossroads and we have to decide: am I going to give up something that I'm not willing to give up in order to go forward, or that I shouldn't give up to go forward? Whereas if you count the cost ahead of time, you can, number one, decide whether it's worth it before you start, or look at another way to achieve your dream. Look for another way to get there.
That's good. So the cost question once again is, what price are we willing to pay? So that also goes with what things are we willing to give up, right? Are there, habits that we do? Are there is there a certain part of entertainment that we like, or recreation that we like to do that is, stunning us from our dream, holding us back from our dream? So we need to ask that question: what price am I willing to pay? We're not just talking money, but we might be talking about sacrificing time, or sacrificing, something that we love to do for the sake of our dream.
There may even be relationships that are bringing us down, or that are just not beneficial, so that sometimes we have to give those up. For
Toxic people in our
Right.
lives, which is relationships.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. How many got some of those folks in our life?
Sure.
Right? Yeah. Well, Bert, you want to take over here?
Sure. And that's the next thing we're talking about in this chapter is paying the price. These are the things we have to pay for. So the things that John talks about in his book: to pay the price, dealing with criticism from people who matter. And I think there's a big differentiator there. We talked about this last week with people, right? There are people who matter in our lives when it comes to our dreams. And let's be honest, there are people who don't matter in our lives when it comes to our dreams. And a lot of times there are people who, the people who say, well, if you want my opinion, and they just give you their opinion no matter what, whether it's desired or not desired. But the hardest criticism comes from those people who actually do matter to us, right? Ralph Waldo Emerson in the book has a quote, and I just want to read it to you. It says, "Whatever course you decide upon, there is always someone to tell you that you are wrong. There are always difficulties arising which tempt you to believe the critics are right, to map out a course of action and follow it to an end requires courage." So what does that mean?
And it means that there's always going to be negative people. There's always going to be negativism that's thrown your way, that you're either going to have to reject it or accept it, one way or the other.
Other people's going to have their opinions on how you should do things and why you shouldn't do things the way you're doing them, and which comes down to the negativity again. Always open for listening to people if, I don't sound like jackwagon, but if they're worth listening to, if they got some points to consider, some intelligent things to bring up, but otherwise just to hear them. No.
I have an uncle who was president of a company that was They did a lot of the installing of those plastic shields in banks back in the 70s and early 80s. And his company was very successful. They were growing, significantly. And he felt the call on him to go into the ministry. And he had family members tell him that you were going to starve, and that he was but he really felt that that's what he needed to do. And he was willing to make that sacrifice, to give up, the, I don't know if prestige is the right word, but give up that position of significance in his company and the money that they were making. And, where he never made that kind of money again, he was successful because, he did what he thought he was supposed to be doing, despite what people were saying.
Good. So why is criticism from people who matter such a high price to pay for your dream?
Because it creates friction in a relationship, or can create friction in a relationship, and sometimes that's really difficult to bear or to deal with.
So you're absolutely right, David. I mean, but if we go into this with our friends, with our circle here, knowing that the criticism might come out, just we have to expect it and maybe prepare ourselves for it. And like somebody said something to Bert a while ago, and he wasn't happy with it, but he went back and thought about it and came back and worked with them. So we're not going to like it probably in the beginning, but just think about it. Go back and dwell on it a little bit and see if it's worth anything to you.
Sometimes their criticism and their directions there might be some legitimacy to what they're saying. So,
and I would imagine there would be, Dave, if they're coming from this group. I start saying something, you guys criticize, or offer up something else. I might not like it, but I'm going to think about it because you guys you're good guys. You're the inner circle.
I don't like what you just said.
Which
You don't like what I said?
I'm being critical.
I'll be back.
So when should we listen and when should we ignore what others have to say? How do we know?
that's tough.
Well, we need to consider what their motive is for the criticism. Do they have our best interest at heart? Is it their own interest that they're trying to preserve? How much do they really care about you? And sometimes they truly believe it is in your best interest, but they don't necessarily have the same knowledge and insight or passion that you do. Those are all things to kind of wade through, consider.
So
Anybody else?
I think that this goes back to number one, the ownership question, chapter 1 there. So it really depends on how we see ourselves. That will determine what we hear from others as either reinforcement, constructive criticism, or just plain criticism. So it's how we see ourselves. How do we view ourselves? So if someone says something that sounds critical, do we automatically default to, well, you just don't like me, you don't love me, so I'm going to cut you out? But if that person has the right motives, but because you don't see yourself as you should see yourself, it's really going to affect how you view and intake what they have to say. What do you think?
I agree.
Yeah, I think
Maxwell
that's right.
gives 5 points to. Go ahead, Dave.
Okay. I think that's right on target. I think you have to be secure in yourself to a degree. Otherwise, you're going to tend to take any criticism anybody offers as a personal affront and push you sideways.
Yeah. Maxwell gives 5 points to consider in his guide. Okay. And here it is right here, which is perfect. And you can see it. The very first one on the list is listen to people who unconditionally love you. And I think that's really important, because if someone unconditionally loves you, whether that be a parent or a spouse or a child or hopefully a pastor or whoever it is, you know that when they're coming to you, they're not coming to you from a position of envy or a position of a personal agenda, right? They're coming to you because they truly love and care about you. And then the second one is criticism is not tainted by their personal agenda. Can someone speak to that? Who has had that experience where you've taken advice from someone and then you come to find out later on that they have a personal agenda and you wish you wouldn't have taken their advice?
I have not.
No.
I can, earlier on in my life when I was looking at getting involved in real estate investing, my wife at the time was extremely fearful and insecure of our financial situation, and instead of looking forward toward the possible benefits, she was reacting strictly out of preservation of what we had, out of fear. And it's really hard to pretty much impossible to do something that involved with someone who doesn't want to go along for the ride.
Sure. And so obviously her agenda directly influenced your ability to pursue your dream, right, David?
Correct.
Yeah. What about letter C? The person is not naturally critical of everything. These are people you'd want to listen to, people who are not naturally critical of everything.
Right. I think we've all got people in our lives who are just critical of everything, or always complaining about something, trashing something, or everything's a conspiracy. They're just critical of everything. You don't need those people because you don't want to talk to them all the time.
But
Or very little.
we have to, but
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know about you guys, but these are the people that I try my best to avoid as much as possible. If there's someone who's critical about everything, they just have a critical spirit about them, I try to give them zero influence in my life, because they drain you, right? These people drain life out of you and your dream, and they tell you everything that you're going to do is not going to work, and all of a sudden you start to second guess yourself. I personally cannot stand being around critical people who lack the ability to see the future. Now, let me clarify something. Because I am an eternal optimist, and I tend to see the best in literally every situation, I do need someone that's able to have my ear and say, did you think about this? And God has blessed me with an amazing wife. And my wife does tend to be critical of things out of questioning. She likes to know the reasons why. She likes to know why things happen the way that they do. And if she was not my wife, she would not have the influence over my life that she does. But I also am smart enough to know that God has given me my wife, because if it wasn't for Stephanie, I probably would have started 15 businesses by now, and I guarantee you half of them probably would have failed. So I give my wife a lot of credit, but let me be clear. She's the only person I allow in my inner circle who is able to question me the way that she does and to stand up to me, because she does. And I appreciate that. And that goes back to letter A, right? That unconditional love, right? So I know that I can allow her to be critical of me because she unconditionally loves me. But I'm not going to let anybody within that sphere of influence who does not unconditionally love me, yet wants to challenge and tear everything down just because they're naturally critical in who they are. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yep.
And for people like me with my personality type, and maybe for some of you, it is important to choose people to be around us that can be critical, that can look at the other direction for us, right? That can, when we see the glass as being, half full, they see it half empty. Or in my case, I just say, fill up the glass. And I need people around me to say, but did you consider this? Did you think about this? And like I talked about last week, sometimes when people do get critical with me, I do take a step back, not out of anger or frustration, but I know I have to critically think without emotion about what they're saying. Because if I allow myself to go the emotional route, then I immediately begin to think of this person as being a jerk. And I have to be really careful about that with the way I process things. So, but how about letter D? Surround yourself with people who continue to support you after they give advice. Why is that important?
I think it goes back to letter A, because these people care about you even when you don't listen to what they say. That even when it's that even when you reject what they say, they're still part of your support group.
That's good.
Yeah, part of the team, part of your dream team.
That's right. And I really like letter E. And this is one area where, again, when you welcome people who are critical or criticism into your circle, you want to bring people in who have knowledge and success in the area where you have weaknesses, right? And that is so important. That's why there's a whole chapter about the dream team in this book, to make sure that you have people around you with success and knowledge where you don't. And here's a perfect example. Right now up here at the ranch, we have a bridge, a 52-foot bridge that crosses a creek. And you have to be able to cross that creek in order to get to the lodge. And so when we bought this place, we knew that some of the timber on that bridge was starting to rot. And Seth and myself, who own the retreat up here, neither one of us have any experience with building bridges. And so, we immediately started to hypothesize in our own minds how we can fix this bridge, how we're going to undertake this. And we got to like our third discussion with all of our plans of how we're going to fix this bridge. And we realized that we had no clue how to fix a bridge. And so we were literally getting ready to call a local sawmill to start cutting this wood for us. And then we said, maybe we should call a couple of bridge makers to do this. And we literally had to force ourselves to step out of our own circle of influence. Remember, don't believe everything you think. And we found out that we could have just replaced all the timber on the bridge. It would have cost about $6,000 to do that. But the wood is going to deteriorate every 4 to 5 years. So over the course of 30 years, we would have replaced the bridge 5 times. And so we found a bridge maker, and he then put us in touch with someone else who produces steel. And then the steel maker put us in touch with someone who produces galvanized steel for bridges. And 5 connections later, we found the solution to be able to put a bridge in that will last for 25 years. But had we not reached out to people with success or expertise, we may have just put in another bridge that we'd have to replace 4 to 5 years from now. So I think it's really important when going back to your dream team, find the bridge makers, find the people who have already done the work and take their advice and accept the criticism from them. because they know what they're talking about.
Often we see on American Idol, right? The judges say, perhaps you should go into a different line of work. And then after they give the criticism, that contestant comes on the camera and says, they don't know what they're talking about, blah, blah, blah. And, those of us at home, most of us, we know better that what that coach was saying was actually information that they needed to hear. But too often they say, well, they don't know what they're talking about. Who do they think they are? And then they end up turning off what they have to say. And so that's not too wise to do that, is it?
Tom, can you go to the next page?
Yes. Yes. So the next page, page 43, number 2, pay the price of overcoming your fears. Pay the price of overcoming your fears. So the question is, what is the price of overcoming your fears?
Education and knowledge, or connecting with an expert.
Now, there's some folks that might join us on one of these masterminds, and they're in fear just to talk about their dream. They're in fear just to say anything because they're afraid someone's going to ask them, what is your dream? Or what price are you willing to pay? And so oftentimes they don't even take the opportunity because of their fears. So what is the price of overcoming your fears? Keith, did you have something you wanted to share?
No, because I don't know how to answer that.
I know what the rewards sometimes are for overcoming your fears, but I don't know what it means by the price of overcoming your fears.
Success.
Mm-hmm.
One step closer.
That's good. All right. So what does it mean to leave your comfort zone?
Oh, that's huge. Comfort zones to me are huge. And we're all in them. We see people who are in them. Us to leave our comfort zone is just going to propel us through the roof on anything we're doing. We just got to step back, get off the couch, turn off NCIS, go read, go just put some action to it.
That's good, Keith.
I remember before I went to grad school, I had a boss tell me that he goes, you do a good job, you do what you're doing, you do well. But he goes, if you ever want to, get advanced, you need to go to grad school. And he goes, but a lot of people, he goes, if you're satisfied in doing what you're doing, stay there, and you can do that for the rest of your career. Because you don't have to worry about it. You can do that forever if you want to, if that's where you're satisfied. But if you're not, it's going to take more effort.
And that is probably the key to life right there, Dave. So anybody else on that question? What does it mean to leave your comfort zone?
I've got a story about my mother-in-law, Suzanne's mom, who had died. She was in her comfort zone. She had some injuries a while back, and she wouldn't exercise. She wouldn't go to rehab so she could walk and stuff. So she sat in her chair and did her knitting, and she was in her comfort zone. Nothing to improve herself. She couldn't go anywhere to go see any of the grandkids or any of the family. She was just sitting there, and she was happy with it. Nobody else could figure it out, but you can't figure out if somebody's in a comfort zone to try and get them out of it. They don't care. They don't care. They're good. They're happy. And she ended up getting sick and not telling anybody, just dealing with it, and she died. Went in the hospital and died, and because she was just good doing what she was doing instead of trying to better herself. And I understand the comfort zone thing with setting her circumstance aside. other people who just let life happen to them. And I do it a lot too, but that's tough to watch somebody just sit back and let life hand it to them.
Yeah.
You know,
And
Tom,
another thing. Sorry, go ahead, Dave.
I'll say, I think the question just below number 2 that might be better. What is the price of not overcoming your fears? You know, because like with his mother-in-law, it was not spending time with the grandkids. It was not getting the help she needed, not getting well. And sometimes, you know, there's definitely a cost of, I knew someone who didn't visit their grandkids because they wouldn't fly. You know, they were scared of airplanes. So the cost of not overcoming that fear had the same kind of results of them not being with their grandkids.
Yeah, John Maxwell in the book, he talks again about mindset and how to address this, paying the price of overcoming your fears, is that oftentimes part of our fear is stepping outside of our current mindset or limited thinking. So you talk about, you know, how do you train an elephant, right, at a young age? Well, you take a baby elephant and you tie it to a post with a chain, you know, a small piece of chain or a small piece of rope, and the baby elephant can't get away. So you fast forward 10 years to a massive, gigantic elephant that weighs, you know, 10,000 pounds. And all that elephant would have to do is take one hard step away from the rope or the chain in the ground, but it doesn't, because it feels that tug and it believes it can't move, that it's chained at any time. So he then takes that story and he compares it to former Surgeon General Everett Koop. Everett Koop said that people have an inappropriate sense of what is dangerous. And Dave, you just alluded to it. People are afraid of flying. You're 2 times more likely to die from choking on food than you are from dying in an airplane crash. Or people say that they're afraid of being stabbed by a stranger, but you're 5 times more likely to die playing professional sports or any sporting event. And so, in other words, the biggest thing to think about here is that the price you pay for overcoming your fears is that you realize that what you were afraid of, there was no reason to be afraid at all to begin with, which now opens your mind to new ways of thinking. Like, wait a minute, everything I believed about my life up to this moment, how much of it wasn't true? And that can be to think that you've been living your entire life in an existence that was not true. And so that can open up a lot of fear for people to think, man, I could have been living my life differently these past 10, 15, 20 years. So that is a price that needs to be paid as well.
Any thoughts on that?
Good. It was good.
Okay, so the next question, what are your can'ts, musts, must not, and other unfounded beliefs that you might have? So we're talking about the cost question again, right? So what are your can'ts? I can't do that because I can't achieve my goal because it's a derivative of fear here. What are your can'ts?
I can't think of any.
Is this specifically relating to our goals, or is this just in general?
What we're talking about your dream here. So, fears keep you in your comfort zone, right? So, you just mentioned talking about flying, fear of flying. So I can't visit my grandchildren because I can't fly, right? Or what other unfounded beliefs do you have that might be hindering you from stepping out of your comfort zone? From there's an expression that says, "Do it afraid." Do it afraid. or as me and Bert always say, jump and build your wings on the way down.
That's my favorite saying.
Yeah. I just jumped, excuse me, I just talked to a fellow John Maxwell team member yesterday. And he's sharing all these things that he wants to do to start his career in leadership. But he's got all these things that have to be in order first, right? And a lot of times we take that approach as a way to, of course we want to do everything right when we do it, right? But sometimes those things can become an obstacle, right? Those things can hinder us from achieving our goal because, you've got the resources around you right now that you could be partaking of. You've got your talent or your skill or whatever the case may be that you could be doing something. But a lot of times we hold back and don't do anything until we want to make sure everything's perfect ahead of time. And sometimes that will hinder us from ever achieving that. Because I don't know about you, but this frustrates me sometimes is when I'm working on something and say, oh, okay, I got to go do this. We did this just the other day with my wife. We were going through trying to get this app set up on our phone. And when we did that, it brought up one roadblock. So we addressed that roadblock, and then another roadblock came up. And then another roadblock. And then, by that time, my wife's like saying, just forget it. And I'm saying, no, if we keep working this, we're going to get it. And we're going to get resolved once and for all. And part of that we did get done, but there's still another roadblock we're still working on. But my point is this. In our quest to make everything just perfect, we may hit roadblock after roadblock. Whereas it keeps us from doing what we were put on this earth to do. So we need to be willing, obviously we want to do things right, but on our way there, let's continue stepping out of the boat because it will reveal new things for us, new challenges that we have to come up against that we can handle because we now know that they're there. Okay? So what are your can'ts or must nots or unfounded beliefs that you might have?
Well, one of mine has always been that I must not fail or I can't fail because there just isn't room for it. It would be the end. It would be done. It would be a disaster. When in fact, that's exactly what I need to do is I need to fail. I need to fail a whole bunch of times till I get exactly where I want to be.
Right.
And learn all those lessons. And, it's a big mind shift. And one I'm still working on, that's still a focus of mine.
I just want to throw that out. I've heard the stories of, Abraham Lincoln and how many times he lost elections before he before the few that he won. And Thomas Edison, all the times that, the things that he tried before he got a light bulb to work. So there's a lot of examples of that continued failure. So just want to encourage you on that.
Good. So explain the difference between living fearlessly and never being afraid.
I love the one story in the book, Tom, where John Maxwell quotes David Mamet. He's a playwright who is writing a play. And this is the exact quote. On June 5th, 1944, thousands of American paratroopers jumped into Normandy. 4 men refused to jump. Can anyone imagine the rest of these men's lives? What prodigies or self-excuse, rationale, or repression they must have had to employ. Their lives, in effect, ended the moment they refused to jump out of the plane. As would the lives of the Jews, had they refused to go into the sea, as will yours and mine, and as they do in part, we each refuse the opportunity to change we stagnate and perform even greater prodigies of repression and hypocrisy to explain to ourselves why we don't immerse ourselves in the mysteries of life. We all die in the end, but there's no reason to die in the middle.
And I just thought, when you said that, Bert, I think it would be better as a man to have died hitting the ground than it would have been to have to live the rest of your life like these men did. You know, so it's like, what is the cost, you know, and what is the cost of not doing what you need to do?
Mhm.
Okay, last question on that is, in achieving your dream, why is it important to refuse to settle for less than what is your due?
You're giving in. You're giving into that temptation to go back into a comfort zone, even if it's different than the first one or where you started. You know, if you quit, if you stop, you're just never going to get there.
Right, right.
Anybody else?
No, that was good.
Bert?
Yeah. Number 3, pay the price of hard work. Pay the price of hard work. So let's talk about it. It is hard to be 100% better than your competition, but you can be 1% better in 100 ways. So talk that through. What does that mean?
Well, I know we make a lot of our decisions on the margin, and you know, and if our product is just a little bit better, or our costs are a little bit better, or our use of time, whatever, is that we can end up being significantly successful just because of that margin, and because of those choices that people make on on that margin.
Yeah, that's good. Anybody else?
In my business and Bert's yours too, a lot of them are service oriented. And a lot of the bigger phone companies, Comcast, AT&T, whoever, even the local phone companies, their service, everybody claims that we get the best service, fastest service, 24-hour response, whatever. But if you don't have that relationship with your customer, you're just a guy going in to fix a phone, run out and charge them $250 for 10 minutes worth of work. That customer's not going to like you anymore, and they're going to do everything they can to leave you. So my biggest thing in this company is customer service. Be there when they need you, walk them through things, and don't, jack them. A lot of times I don't charge for fixing things just because I'm in the area. I'll stop by and do it. I think that goes a long way. I don't think it's being dumb. You business coaches might, but it's all about relationship.
Well, and I
like
think
the notion.
I think the striving to be just a little bit better than your competition, 1% in 100 ways, keeps you at your best. Even if you are not, even if an outsider might look at it and go, well, you're really not quite better than your competition. It keeps you at the best you can be, and it makes your goal to do that, it puts it within reach. If you look at your competition and go, I'm going to be twice as good as they are, well, that may not be realistic. And if it's not realistic, eventually you're going to give up on that.
Yeah.
And I also think it keeps you from letting other areas go, where if you're totally product oriented and you let your service go, because you're so product oriented that you let these other areas fall by the side. But by trying to be 100 by 1% in 100 ways, it causes you to look at the whole picture and look at your entire business portfolio and what you're doing.
And this goes back to that book Tom was talking about and the slight edge and the compound effect. You just do a little bit better than everybody else, and it's just going to keep growing and growing and growing.
It's really good. There was a few years back, Stephanie and I, we owned a company called Zippy Bounce, and all we did was deliver bounce houses. And when we were starting to look into it, we found that the bounce house companies were terrible at cleaning their bounce. So you look at reviews and everybody says the bounce house was dirty. And what we found out is that if we just took 5 minutes off the install of each bounce house and we cleaned it, that we would get a 5-star rating for our bounce houses. We had the same bounce houses as the competition. Our prices were the same, but everybody else got horrible reviews because their bouncers were dirty. And so we just wanted to be better in one area, and that was cleaning and sanitizing the bounce. And we set it up. And sure enough, at the end of the first season, we had the highest ranked bounce house company in Metro Detroit, even though we were the smallest, even though we didn't have the resources. We only had, one van for deliveries. We only had 6 bounce houses. And at the end of the first season, we were the highest rated bounce house company in Metro Detroit because we took 5 minutes to clean the bouncer so the customer could see us cleaning it when we set it up. And that made all the difference in the world. So you're right. Just be better. Just be 1% better than the big boys out there. And it makes a huge difference, right? Why is it important to participate rather than just belong to a cause? Why is it important to participate at church rather than just being a member at church? This can apply to anything. Why is that important?
That's a lot of reasons. One thing is because you take ownership, and you can be part of, and if change is needed, you can be part of that change as opposed to just sitting around criticizing.
Yeah.
A lot of these answers are going to be the same. Who's going to talk, Keith?
Yeah, well, back when we were Woodlawn and Martineau was there, there was always be something like, well, why don't they do this and why don't they do that? That lasted about 2 weeks, and he said, Spicer, we are they. It's like, oh, yeah, okay. So yeah, you got to get involved, and you got to get involved to, like Dave says, to help make the changes, to promote the changes, the growth.
Yeah. So what's the difference between caring for people and helping people?
The action step, actually doing something.
I think you could make the argument that if you really care, you will help, but that's, I think the helping is the actual step. So.
Yeah, that's what I was just
right.
gonna say.
Notice
you can help. It's hard to help people and not say I don't care about them. You know what I mean? You have to. And anyway, I agree with Dave.
But I think a lot of people say they care about something and don't do anything about it.
Right.
Walking by
or
a homeless
it's
guy.
the cost factor again. Right. It's the cost factor. Everybody can participate. Everyone can belong to a cause, right? Oh, on social media, I'm hashtag this. Well, that didn't cost you anything. Right? I mean, these younger generations, they care about people, but they really don't, it doesn't cost them anything because they're not actually helping people, right? It doesn't cost us anything to be a social media warrior. It just doesn't.
Right.
But the difference, when you really care about somebody, well, it's going to cost you something because you want to help them, right? And then why is it important to practice what you believe rather than just believing it?
There's no substance to just believing if you're not taking any action. There's nothing deep within you. How can you go to bed at night feeling good? Well, I prayed for a homeless guy because he was hungry. Well, you could have taken him to McDonald's, given him a gift card to McDonald's. That was the parking lot he was standing in.
It's very similar to the previous question. If you really believe something, then you will do it. You will take action. You will practice it. You know, I can sit here and tell you all day long I believe that I can fly, but if I don't actually jump off a building or something, how much are you going to think that I actually believe that?
Right. Yeah, there's an old saying that I like to use: if it doesn't cost you something, it probably isn't worth anything, right? So you have all these people that say, I care so much about the homeless. Well, if it's not costing you something to care for the homeless, then you probably really don't care about the homeless, right? What's the difference between a leader who teaches? Go ahead. Somebody gonna say something? Sorry.
I was just going to say that, you know, I know a guy who is not financially strong. I mean, but he definitely now goes out, even though in actually taking food to the homeless, raising money to go give things to the homeless. And so I just, you know, here's a guy who's struggling himself, but is taking the time to really show that he cares. I think that's just the perfect example of this. He's not giving out of his excess. He's giving out of, you know, a real desire to help people. So.
Absolutely. That's great. What's the difference between a leader who teaches and a leader who inspires?
That's a very good question, and that is an absolute difference. There are guys who just teach, and there are ones who inspire you to whatever they're teaching, to delve into that and to take action on what they're teaching or talking about. I'll go back to Bible studies. There are guys who can teach a good Bible study, but you walk out and it's like, yeah, that was cool. Then there are Bible studies you go to, and they're doing a study in Ephesians, like, wow, that was cool. And you want to go back, and then you start reading Ephesians and going deep into that. The inspirational guys are the best. Sorry, Dave.
Well, I think they go hand in hand. A leader who teaches empowers. You know, you empower someone to do something by giving them a skill, by teaching them a skill. But at the same time, you know, a leader who inspires, you know, can get somebody to teach themselves or to seek out other teaching, or I don't know. It's a tough question.
Yeah, I think you need both. Someone can be inspirational, but not, you know, someone can give you just a desire to go out and, you know, and play your sport, whatever it might be. But if he doesn't teach you how to do it, then you get out there and you just fail miserably.
Right.
So I think you do need both.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, but like Keith said, if someone tells you how to do it but doesn't make you want to get out there and do it, that's, you know, you're not getting anywhere either.
I heard a similar question yesterday. That is, what's more important to lead people or develop leaders?
I know what Craig Rouchet would say.
And?
Develop leaders. That's what he feels, you know, his calling is. He has 34 churches, but he definitely feels like his primary goal is to develop leaders to lead the other people. You know, it's like is it better to teach people to fish or to teach people to fish? I think you can have more of a bigger impact by teaching others to do what you want to do.
Leaders lead. That's what they do. It doesn't matter whether it's for good or for bad or which direction. Leaders lead. You can't stop them from doing that. And so I think developing leaders is much more important because they're going to lead anyway.
I knew a pastor once who was fearful of, of losing control of his church and of people leaving, whatever. And he didn't develop leaders. He led, his church was growing, but then when he died, his church fell apart because there was no one to follow up because he hadn't developed the people. And so the church struggled significantly because of his lack of leadership in that area.
It's good. Guys, just for time, I want to go to page 45 because I want to make sure we cover the last 3 questions of this chapter. And I'll read the quote, and then Tom, if you want to take the question after the quote, we can finish up with these 3 if that's okay. It says, most people will base their dream on what it will cost them. Your dream will be based on how much you are willing to pay. Most people will base their dream on what it will cost them. Your dream will be based on how much you are willing to pay. That's a different mindset, right? There's a different mindset between saying, this is going to cost me this much, willing to pay this much. You see the difference there?
Yeah.
Is it because the one's the positive as opposed to, the one is as a negative mindset in the first line?
Right, that's right. The first one is it's a negative, dominant, limiting mindset, right? If you're going out to build a house, right? If you're just saying, this is going to cost me so much money, I can't really do this, and you're trying to save and pinch pennies, that's a cost. But if you're looking to build your dream house, now you're saying, you know what? I know that that my dream house is going to cost me $1,000, but I also know that I want a pool. So am I really willing to pay extra for that pool? Or are you just saying it's too much, I can't cost, it costs too much, I can't do it? So there's a different mindset. Finding ways to pay for something than saying it's going to cost me a certain amount and I can't afford to do that. So, Tom, why don't you walk us through the next 2 or 3 questions then?
Sure thing. So the question is, how far are you willing to take your dream? So in the previous chapters, we went through where do you see yourself in your dream? Does your dream wake you up in the morning excited? Or when you think about your dream, does it make you just want to go back to bed? So that's kind of the question here. And this will determine whether your dream is really your dream or really important to you or not. Right? So how far are you willing to take your dream?
Difficult for me to wrap my mind around that question just because my dream is my dream. Like if I don't go all the way to my dream, then it's not my dream.
It's good, David. Anybody else on that thought? How far are you willing to take your dream?
I don't know how to answer that again.
Yeah, to me, these are questions that you ponder. There's not just a one-line answer for these. Even the next one.
Absolutely.
So.
Right.
Let's see. There's a quote that that I came across, and I'm trying to pull it up really quick to show you, or to read it to you on that note. It's loading. Okay, here it is. When you get in a tight place and everything goes against you, till it seems as though you could not hold another minute longer, never give up then, for that is just the place that the tide will turn. That is just the place that the tide will turn. How many people have given up just short of achieving their goals? I remember an old episode of Twilight Zone, and these guys thought that they were stranded on a planet. They had shot off in a rocket and somehow had landed back on Earth, but they didn't know that they were on Earth. They were just in this desert area. And they searched and searched, and then they gave up on one side of this hill. And just on the other side of this hill was a little town. And their salvation was just on the other side of the hill. But they gave up. So how far are you willing to take your dream? Are you willing to keep doing what is ever necessary to fulfill your dream? Or are you just going to, as Bert said, stop in West Virginia?
I would think this group, we're all just going to keep going. I don't see anybody here stopping in West Virginia.
It's beautiful this time of year.
I don't know if you guys are familiar with Victor Borga, but he does a little musical comedy thing, or did. I don't even know if he's still alive. But he tells a little story in there about how his dad used to was an inventor of soft drinks, and the first one he called 1-Up, and then the second version was 2-Up, and how his dad quit it at 6-Up and never knew how close he was to.
That's good. So, what is the maximum price you will pay? I've heard of people who have gone into a casino and they say, well, you know what? I've only got $100. This is all I'm spending. I'm not spending any more. Right? Now, they want to be rich, or else they wouldn't be going into a casino probably. But, they set this limit on it. But what price are you willing to pay? Because we know that investments that we make, we may lose. But are we willing to continue to invest or find new ways to invest to continue reaching our dream?
And I think it's important that we think about that and determine that, because like the person in the casino, if we don't have limits, we can lose everything. So even in that example, I think that's important.
Right on. Right. Keith?
That was a good point Dave made. You keep going until you, at the casinos, they keep going, they lose everything. So that wouldn't apply to us keep going. It's just going to come down to the family again, and each individual, where the line is, where you're going to.
And I think it's more than just family too. It's things like integrity. You know, there are people who are willing to pay or give up their integrity for their goals.
Mm.
You know, what other things are we not willing to give up, you know, or, you know, for, and we have to determine where is that line?
Yeah.
Well, and I think in the casino example, the person may have a dream to be rich, but they haven't really paid the price in figuring out the best route to their dream.
Mhm.
They're not willing to pay the price to invest the time and energy it takes to become rich. They're looking for the shortcut. So they've already paid a price before they lose their money.
Yeah, that was good, Travis, what you said about the integrity. You don't compromise that. Don't compromise your values, your morals, anything like that for your dream. Because it's not going to provide any good fruit. It's just not.
Right.
Well, guys, we're gonna wrap it this week. And again, I just want to remind you, everybody, that realleadershipcompany.com is the website. You can go there to find courses and content. Every session that we've done so far for Put Your Dream to the Test is on there. We actually have 3 more sessions left, you guys. 3 more chapters left in this book, chapters 8, 9, and 10. Next week, we'll be talking about tenacity. We also want to point you to the real life stories section of the website. Last week, we did a great episode with Tom Llewellyn from North Star Church in Olympia, Washington, talking about how the pandemic changed the way they do church. And again, how there's positive things that come out of tough times. That was great. And also don't forget crisis with John Maxwell. Those sessions are on there. So we encourage you guys to check that out. But thank you guys for joining us for this week's session. And again, we are going to get back together 3 more weeks as we finish up John Maxwell's book, Put Your Dream to the Test. Also, I just want to encourage you guys to continue to develop those habits. We have the weekly dream tracker that we've been working with, so I encourage you guys to keep on working on this as well. Again, it takes 21 days to really develop a habit. This would be the 3rd week. So once again, we encourage you guys to fill this out, what you're working on each day to continue to achieve your dreams, and it just gets you in the habit of making that happen. Does anybody have anything else that they want to share this week before we wrap up?
I'm good.
Hey, thanks, guys. I really appreciate you guys doing this.
Yeah.
Good,
great.
man.
Yep, very
Cool.
valuable.
We'll see you next city. So have a great week, everybody.
All right, guys. See ya.
Bye, guys.